Hello and welcome to another episode of the Odd Lots podcast. I'm Joe Weisenthal.
And I'm Tracy Alloway.
Tracy, remember in like the 2000s or like the financial crisis and everyone...
I can barely remember last year, but
Okay.
Go on.
And everyone said, oh, it's such a tragedy. People could have been curing cancer, but then they were spending their time coming up with like more and more complex derivatives. And then I feel like for the 2010s, that morphed to all the smart people could have been curing cancer, but they spent their time getting more ads onto like tiny phone screens and stuff like that.
This is the whole like software sucking up the entire economy idea. But yes, I do remember that criticism. There was a lot of thought that went into how to best advertise on the internet. And in fact, I think we had an episode at one point about how the internet was actually powered purely by ads, right?
No, I mean, it more or less seems to be. I mean, I guess people do pay for something, but it also feels like that era, both sort of from a macro standpoint and maybe a micro standpoint, is coming to a close again. Again, another decade pivot, because we have seen a lot of these internet mega companies like meaningfully start to slow growth. The business models aren't firing on all cylinders as they once were. And then just sort of like tech in general, from macro reasons, seems to be, it had better days.
Right. Interest rates are going up. And so a lot of the valuations of big tech companies are coming down. But also to the business model point, I think this is interesting because initially, we talk about very smart people going to tech firms and venture capital and spending a lot of mental energy there trying to figure out the business model. But to some extent, it feels like the easy gains are kind of behind us, right? It was you create a product, you get everyone on your particular platform or using your product or whatever, and then you make a bunch of money. And now it feels like things are changing.
Absolutely. I mean, look at a company like Facebook, for example, is just this, they're really having to work for it. Like their model is stressed right now, and there's the rise of TikTok and so forth. Every one of these companies, it feels like to some extent, after creating a decade of like the best money vacuuming up machines that were ever created, are now like, they kind of have to really work for it now.
Yeah, and come up with, let's say, more creative strategies. And one of the things we've seen recently is something from Apple.
Right. And so one of the stories is that Apple has this incredible position in the ecosystem because so many people own an iPhone and they pull out the first thing they interact with is the iPhone to get to the internet. And they have a lot of power over these other companies in terms of, what shows up on that iPhone and how.
Right. And again, they're having to be more creative in making money off of those products, right? The iPhone is getting more technologically advanced. You don't have to necessarily buy one every year. People are holding on to them for longer. So how do you wrest more money out of that particular customer base?
Such a tragedy. Companies are having trouble wresting more money out of their customer base. What a terrible situation. Anyway, without further ado, I want to talk more about online advertising, this world, the challenges all these companies are facing. We're going to be speaking with our colleague, Mark Bergen. He's a reporter here at Bloomberg, and he is the author of a recently published book, Like, Comment, Subscribe, Inside YouTube's Chaotic Rise to World Domination. So, Mark, thank you so much for coming on Odd Lots, and congratulations on the book.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, like, why a book about YouTube now? Why'd you do this project?
Yeah, YouTube is this kind of a sleeping giant in social media. Someone described it as like this iceberg that no one ever really talks about as much for a variety of reasons. I see YouTube as both the past and now future of social media. And it was the first company to pay online broadcasters and invented the creator economy. And now we're seeing with TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitch, you name it, are all moving in this direction. Social media is no longer your friends and family and your acquaintances. It is influencers. It is celebrity. It is a game built around commerce. And this is a world that YouTube very much created.
Should we be telling Odd Lots listeners to like, comment, and subscribe? Other podcasts do that.
I mean, it's an effective call to action.
Okay.
All right, everyone, like, comment, and subscribe on Odd Lots wherever you find it. Okay, but we were talking in the intro about this idea that the sort of like easy gains are over for social media. And it is true. We've seen all these new issues also come up, like antitrust when it comes to Facebook and Google, content regulation when it comes to YouTube, who should be the arbiters of what's true and what isn't. Are the easy days over for social media?
I mean, YouTube's business has grown tremendously. And part of it was because they really didn't kind of lock into their commercial success until 2014, 2015. So the only data we have available is beginning in 2017 for their ads business. But 2017, that was around 8 billion. Last year, it was close to 29 billion.
Wow.
Pretty phenomenal growth. They just took off during the pandemic. When the viewership numbers and we're all stuck at home watching, there were Hollywood studios were shut down. Like YouTube became the default media aesthetic, and a lot of kids, a lot of yoga videos, just the hours have just exploded. But the business has been crippled. I think you could make the argument more by Apple's changes than by any regulation thus far.
All right, let's jump right into it. So Apple, they say, oh, we're the defenders of privacy. And now I always get these alerts on my phone. It's like, do you still want to be broadcasting information to that app? It looks like maybe you haven't rethought this or something, which I imagine is not great for those apps when I click no.
Yeah, I mean, there were people in Google and Facebook, less so at Google, but they will gripe privately. Facebook started to do it publicly. Apple is now building out a search advertising business. They're starting to hire more people. This is a really savvy move. They've marketed themselves as the privacy first company. They have restricted online cookies on iPhones and kneecapped a lot of potential digital rivals. I think the one way to look at it is they are driving this force movement towards less behavioral and targeted advertising, the sort of foundation for the internet economy of the last 2 decades. The cynical view is that they have found a pretty effective way to build out a competing business to Google without the world really knowing it.
Well, okay. So first of all, if you talk to Apple about this, they will say it's about privacy concerns. If you talk to their competitors like YouTube or Facebook, they will probably say this is a revenue grab. How are you thinking about it? And what are the sort of clues or evidence on either side?
Yeah, I think Google's a really interesting test case. It has this frenemy relationship with Apple. They are competitors, certainly in obviously in smartphone markets. Google's kind of gone after them a lot around an iPhone, but in their Google's primary business of search advertising, Apple is an extraordinarily convenient partner because for a long time, Google has been the default search engine for Apple, and now that it's the subject of a Department of Justice antitrust case, I think this is the chief reason why Facebook, Meta has been griping very publicly about what Apple's been doing, and you haven't heard a peep from Google. And in part because their search business is less affected. Search ads in general are less reliant on the kind of third-party cookies. YouTube, however, is heavily reliant on the fact that they can serve much better and higher priced ads if they know all the videos that you've watched, all the other websites you visited, all the sort of granularity that this entire complex machinery of online advertising is built upon.
So can we actually take a step back and can you maybe explain exactly how the market operated before Apple's big switch? Because this is not something that I am entirely familiar with, other than, as Joe mentioned, suddenly you get all these notices on your phone saying, do you want to opt into data tracking? Yeah,
I mean, it is, I think, remarkably similar to sort of financial markets in its complexity and opacity. There are effectively two-sided markets right there. There's a buy side and a sell side where you have, publishers that are out there have a lot of online real estate, and that's everything from Bloomberg.com and the New York Times to very popular mobile apps that and Snapchat, Twitter, right? Twitter has real estate, and then there are a bunch of marketers that want to get in front of consumers. Google has the machinery on both sides, they own both sides of the market. And Google is the world's biggest digital advertising company. They have been for decades now the sort of primary way that online publishers have monetized is with Google AdSense. That basically AdSense is the same exact model on YouTube, just taken over to video. So it is the world's biggest online video advertising service by far. And effectively it's a very easy and increasingly automated system where if I'm a marketer, I'm P&G. P&G spends millions of dollars and billions of dollars in marketing. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to kind of give them a chunk of money effectively. It goes through a bunch of ad agencies, and then Google's going to allocate that based on, we're going to give this to search in front of people whenever they type a keyword. We're going to put this on display to put on the Bloomberg.coms of the world, and we're going to allocate this to video, knowing that we can actually reach in this very hyper-targeted way the consumers we want to reach.
Are there speculators who might be the equivalent of a hedge fund or a trading desk who will buy ad inventory just on the assumption that they can flip it and sell it for more than what that person was selling for?
I haven't heard of that one. There's certainly like all sorts of middlemen in the industry, and there were times in the era, I'm sure this still happens, but I used to go to all these advertising conferences and all sorts of ad tech companies that they ask them what they do, and it's this, you don't really understand where they sit in the stack, right? There's just like all sorts of complexities, and they're programmatic advertising companies that just do one thing on mobile, and there was Bluetooth advertising was a big hot thing where you could actually like serve an ad to a consumer right when they're in front of the Colgate at the aisle. Like we're moving towards this world, and certainly before Apple stepped in, of incredible, like their geofencing, be able to like get your cellular data and know your exact location and push alerts. And this is why it's under so much privacy and antitrust scrutiny, is because it became quickly invasive and incredibly unregulated.
So can you talk to us maybe about like how important data targeting or targeting of an audience actually is? Because I think we hear these things like, it makes it harder for advertisers if they're not able to track your data. Like, why is that so important? And like, can you maybe give us some numbers around how valuable a targeted ad is versus an untargeted one? I don't even know if untargeted ads exist on the internet anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and just on to sort of add on to Tracy's question, like let's say I go to golf.com.
Yeah.
Okay. The ads that I get, like how much is it? He's on golf.com. He probably wants to read about golf, as opposed to ads that I get that maybe, the last 10 sites I went to is like pets.com or something like that. Yeah. And so how valuable is it for golf.com to be able to know that I also like pets? I mean,
there's all sorts of open and unsolved questions about the value and precision of online advertising. The classic example is like you go and you buy a pair of sneakers, and then all you see are ads for the same exact sneakers, like just following you around the internet, right? It's like, I just bought these. Why do you like the world's biggest tech companies that supposedly know a lot about you, like can't solve that problem.
You bought one pair of sneakers. You must want
want
more.
Another one, right?
Well, I do, but I definitely don't need a second stove.
Yeah, I think that to a certain extent, YouTube is a really interesting example. In part, like they built this very a fantastic targeting model where they can like show an ad to a viewer. You mentioned like if you watch a lot of golf channels, right? Like if you're an advertiser, you are going to probably want to get in front of that. If you're selling golf gear or clubs, you want to get in front of that person that's watching a lot of YouTube videos. They have this feature, I'm sure, the skippable ad format, which is a major part of their success, was because if the consumer is actually watching this because they didn't click the skip button, that's worth a lot more money. And if Nike runs an ad that didn't skip, Adidas is going to want to pay more in this automated bidding system. And this is why Google search kind of works really well with scarcity too, where it's like they can drive up the cost per mil or cost per click pretty high in these scarce markets.
Well, let's go back then to the Apple situation directly. Prior to this policy change, what was an iPhone user giving to various apps when they use them? And when did the policy change, and what are they getting now from those users?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is really hard to trace, but if I was an iPhone user and I'm using maybe like a Chrome or even Safari, you're getting a lot of background data. And that's like there's a lot of ad companies you probably never heard of who are like serving a cookie on your mobile browsing. Some of it there are companies that have like invented ways to do deep linking between when you bounce from an app to the web, right? This has always been Google's fear of Apple in some ways, is that Apple is if your only experience on an iPhone is just moving from app to app, right? Like that is you're no longer going through the turnstile of the internet, which is Google. And so certainly amount of data about the websites you visited, how long you link, like what you click on, all those sort of signals. Is my understanding is like with now that they've kind of fully eliminated third-party cookies, and Google has said they're doing the same for Chrome, which is they own the Chrome browser. It is actually Google has pushed that timeline back several years. I think now they say 2024. And so the idea, basically these third-party sites that do the tracking you effectively will not be able to know your internet history of what, if you visit golf.com and then you go to ESPN doesn't know that you visited golf.com, right? ESPN might just see you as a sports fan. They don't see you as a golf fanatic.
What scope do companies have to sort of bypass Apple's restrictions on this? Is there a lot of leeway to still somehow track people, even if they've opted out?
I'm not an expert, but Google and Facebook have both sort of invented these machine learning models that can walk in backwards, right?
Kind of build proxies of your activity. They're building, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They both have different jargony names for the services, but effectively that's it. We're gonna put you in a group of people. I'm gonna keep going back to this golf example. We're gonna put you in a group of. We don't know that you, Joe, are actually visiting this, but we know that there's enough golf fans doing this activity or using this app, and so we can approximate. I mean, the real issue here is that there's Google and Facebook are have been in a duopoly in this world for a very long time. That is the third. The actual challenger now is Amazon, right? Certainly not a small company. Amazon's ads business has grown tremendously in the past few years. And they're less threatened by this because it's all in-house, right? Amazon's business is based on the activity on Amazon properties. So that's one way that companies have got around it. The big push also that all the platforms, you see a bunch of ad tech companies have pivoted towards e-commerce, especially during the pandemic.
For what it's worth, and for listeners, I don't even golf, and I don't have a pet, so I don't know why I use those examples. It just seemed, I just needed to get that out there. The ads that I've been getting on Instagram lately have been absolute garbage. The worst target it's just unbelievable.
Wait, is that true? Okay, because the ads that I've been getting on Instagram, because I experimented with this because I got really interested. I was like, where are they getting this info from? Yeah. It seems to be coming in through Google. It's if you do a Google search, it shows up on Instagram.
Yeah, or there's the one that they always have to debunk, which is if you're talking the microphone thing.
I tried that too. Yeah. My husband and I did baby carriages. We're not having a baby, but just as an experiment to see what would show up. Nothing if you talk about them in front of Alexa, but if you Google search for it, they show up on Instagram.
Google for a long time tried to keep, they had a state and church and state separation from search and the rest of display internet. That started changing in 2015. In part, that was just about a financial concern. They wanted to give more data to the ad tech industry. It was just bigger growth. But for a long time, at least they said, and people I've talked to in the early days, have this almost religious belief that your searches. I mean, Google has our most intimate data, right? The things we're searching for. We tell Google things that we wouldn't tell our spouses, kind of, right? And so that search data is incredibly valuable to a marketer if they're selling pharmaceuticals or lawyers, right? Those are the industries that typically have incredibly high search ads because they're people that are really in demand for a particular thing. Instagram is, Facebook has, it's so funny. People talk about how crappy the ad qualities are, and yet their ads business, certainly has been suffering because of Apple's changes, but it's still the one of the two kings of the industry.
Well, then talk about what we've seen specifically. So when you say, okay, because this is the core of the whole thing. When we talk about their businesses has started to suffer because of the policy changes that Apple has made, what are we seeing concretely in terms of how it's spilling over?
Yeah, the dollars. I think some of this was, the other factor. There are macroeconomic factors, and for marketing, there's the war in Ukraine, and then there's just the pandemic in general. But in part, if you're an advertiser and your choices are between, say, television or billboard ad and Facebook, the argument for online has always been there's a joke about TV. I don't, you put your ad up there and you have no idea who's watching necessarily. And that's just sort of brand advertising, right? And in the industry, there's brand and there's direct response. And the direct response ads are the one where you want people to make an immediate action. You want them to install an app, buy a thing. This is, Apple's changes have made it much more difficult to do that. And so they're getting, they have to be more reliant on brand advertising, the sort of contextual, just old.
But just to be clear, do we know, like, have they put a dollar amount, or did they say, this is what it would be?
Facebook put a amount on there, actually, and I don't have it off the top of my head. I mean, their market cap has taken a huge hit, and some of it is regulation, but have they really been regulated? Yeah, like there's kind of just the specter of regulation. It's not like Congress hasn't gone after. The only real big tech regulation I talk about in the book is the FTC went after YouTube for illegally targeting kids with collecting data on children under 13. And that's another area where, like, there's this whole online academy that's been unregulated, and you're not allowed to collect data on children under 13. And yet a lot of companies have done that. I mean, we don't know the numbers for YouTube in part because they don't share their financial data. But what was Meta's valuation drop in the past?
I don't know.
A lot.
There's definitely. I'll just say this. Let's see. Actually, the stock went from around 360 to 160, and the market cap at the peak of 2021 was about 1.06 trillion, and now it's 420.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook is cheap.
And so then, okay, of that roughly $500 billion market cap, has anyone made an attempt to say how much can we ascribe this to Apple and that change in the online network?
Facebook's business is primarily mobile advertising. And iPhones, there was a new stat, I think, recently that they're now they've just leapfrogged Android in the US. It's the most popular system. Apple has historically been the Apple phones just make a lot more money per user than Android phones do. And so we can assume that Facebook makes a lot more money on iPhones than on Android. And so that is a bulk of their business. And I think we could say like a significant impact.
So you mentioned antitrust a number of times, and also the sensitivity of like Google complaining about what Apple is doing, given that they have a slightly different relationship with Apple than something like Meta, and also given that they're under antitrust scrutiny themselves. But what are the chances that we do get some sort of antitrust action when it comes to Apple and their transparency push? Because it seems a little difficult. It's like, on the one hand, well, you own the product, you're making it a walled garden, you're cutting people off from it. But on the other hand, you say you're doing it for privacy reasons, right? That should sound good to regulators.
Right. Apple certainly had more pressure around the App Store and the accusation that they're running on like an App Store monopoly and that, if you own an iPhone, you're basically like, Apple is the gatekeeper. And I think this digital advertising, and there's certainly companies in the advertising space that complain about that. Like, Apple's one movement from Cupertino has single-handedly has huge ripple effects for this multi-billion-dollar digital advertising world. I think that, as far as I understand, Apple has faced some in Congress, and the Epic lawsuit, the creators of Fortnite, has sued Apple, also sued Google, but they've really gone after Apple about in-store app fees for Fortnite games. I think that, like, for Google's case, the most likely outcome from any antitrust might be to kneecap some of their ad tech and like the way their digital advertising works.
So what about for small businesses? This is the argument in favor of like hyper-targeted advertising. That's like, it's like, are you looking for a new dentist in the East Village or teeth whitening or something like that? They could be like hyper-targeted. Like, oh my God, how did they know? I need a teeth white. I'm doing video for Odd Lots now. I need teeth whitening. You hear about these complaints, but sometimes you can't tell if it's like AstroTurf, like some group that Facebook like may have like encouraged. Like, how real is this for the companies? They were able to like find a model because they were really good at like, finding their exact potential customers.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook, part of the success of Facebook and Google has been the long tail, like the mom and pop advertisers. Facebook has leaned into this a lot as a response to Google as well. They're going to Amy Klobuchar's office in Congress and saying, like, why are you trying to hurt small businesses, right? And like, that might be a compelling argument. Certainly it has political.
Because like for a P&G, like everyone is going to buy laundry detergent or something, right? And so for them, I don't know if they need as hyper targeting as like.
Like P&G level, they basically operate as like they have all these ad agencies that effectively operate as consultancies, and like they are looking at they're running ads with spreadsheets and algorithms and like moving the numbers around. And so, yes, I think that is somewhat compelling. The fact that they're and probably going to continue to, like, they know the argument that Facebook and Google will make, despite these changes around, we lose some of our targeting and richness. The audience is still here. Like, relative, this has been like YouTube's argument for over a decade now, is like, compared to television, there are so many more people and so many more hours spent on YouTube, and that the amount of money, the marketing dollars spent on television is not proportionate. Like, if you want to challenge, and there've been some challenger brands in CPG, right? Like the real smart challenger brands will like be where the kids are, and will be like get in front of the audience on digital and do like sponsored content deals and like can lean into digital advertising. That's effectively worked, right? Like, these companies have grown because that argument has worked, and money is moving over from TV to the internet.
What exactly is Apple's search and advertising business? Like, there's not an Apple search engine, right? Like, what exactly are we talking about when we say Apple's really like?
Yeah, I mean, there's Siri, which is an Apple search engine in some ways, right? There's the App Store, which I think that's where if you look at the tea leaves on where they're hiring and putting resources, it is to run like effectively like a search advertising business in the App Store. Yeah, like you want to promote. I don't know, like you're searching for like Uber, and Lyft's like, I want to like spend money to be up the top result when you search for Uber, and then people are going to click on Lyft. Like,
So what's the sort of like game plan from the Facebooks of the world or the YouTubes of the world? Like, what can they do to actually try to offset this? And I guess a very extreme example, but could Facebook like launch its own phone or something? Like, if the idea is to get as close to a customer as possible.
Yes. Well, Google has,
right.
Like I got a Google Pixel in front of me, in part because of the company I cover, and Google Pixel was a response because like Google has Android, the open source software model. They give away their software for free to Samsung and like a galaxy of handset makers. And that they like for a long time, like Google was like, okay, these will be rivals to Apple, and it hasn't really happened. And Apple, like I said, has just premium. They like people spend more money on iPhones, and then I think Google saw, in part, they're investing in Pixel because they saw this world. They're like, oh, our digital advertising model is not going to last for a long time. We need to own and operate the actual hardware. We've reported on this quite a bit. Facebook has tried several times. It looks like, their company is now pivoting towards. Like, I think Mark Zuckerberg's bet is that we're going to stick a phone in our face and he's going to own that. Right. And like, so they've renamed the company Meta. Like, Facebook's existential crisis has always been that Google and Apple own the operating systems where they make most of their money. And so the move in the metaverse is Facebook will have the.
Why are we even recording this all together at a studio? We could be like
legless avatars,
avatars around.
It's a frightening thought.
Google and YouTube and the rest of social media is commerce, like pushing commerce pretty aggressively. And this looks like, I think, more ways to purchase directly, buy something directly in Instagram, for instance, buy something directly in a YouTube video. Like, I think they're running into like the uncanny valley of how much do you want social media to look like the home shopping network. But the YouTube and part of the reason I wrote this book is really fascinating. Like, they built up the millions. There are about over 2 million creators that make money on YouTube. That number is actually down from when the company had to make it a little bit harder. But that's a lot of that's a whole economy. So many of them are now comfortable because it's been harder and increasingly harder to make money, and then to make now with Apple's changes higher ad rates online. So they're moving towards, and if you watch enough YouTube, you'll like a lot of them have sponsored content deals, right? Or they're just like trying to sell their merch and their merchandise like tabs, and they're looking in the channel. I think they're experimenting. TikTok is also moving in commerce. Like, that is a direct response to Apple as a privacy regulation, carving out the profitability of online ads.
So, just last big picture, does it feel like this is the end of, Tracy mentioned, like, if I don't remember when we did it, 3 or 4 years ago, someone came on and talked to us about the extent to which the entire internet is all ads. And does this feel like a turning point? Because then, and I don't want to even like talk about, I don't even want to say the word, but like, Web3 and this like idea of like there's going to be like something else that's like we have to like buy coins from
I'm actually surprised we made it like 30
I know,
minutes.
we did. Yeah, we did.
No ads. We just like buy coins from Mark Andreessen in order to use the internet. Is this a turning point? Is this
the plausibility of Web3 notwithstanding, like the criticism of the Andreessens of the world is like, look at this economy we built around online advertising is not the world we want. And like, I think I'll share an anecdote from the book, which is, YouTube started like a decade ago. YouTube was not making money. It was unprofitable.
Right.
And they were trying to, after the financial crisis, they're like, okay, we need to make money from this thing. And there was an ads manager who gave a presentation on stage about how they were going to do it. And Sergey Brin, who this is not confirmed, but Sergey Brin, in my reporting, Sergey Brin is a founder of Google, worth, how much is Sergey worth? One of the world's wealthiest men, largely based on a search advertising business, made a joke about how how the YouTube ads were like, he interrupted the speech being like, haha, like YouTube ads are disruptive, and we
95.7 billion, by the way.
Like the founders of Google have
you just say 100 billion at that point.
Never keep it accurate here at Bloomberg.
The founders have like notoriously never loved advertising as a business model. Like it has clearly been successful for them. Like they will make it like a lot of them will be like search ads, you're delivering a thing that you really want. And the rest of the ads is kind of icky. And like, there's a sense, it's this weird irony in the fact that they're the biggest online advertising company. And yet a lot of people that work there like don't love this. It's kind of sleazy market. Like people in marketing know this, right?
I think they think of it as like old economy, right? Like ad sales.
Absolutely true. And so Web3 or whatever, like, I think that you can, the sort of case inside Silicon Valley is like, here's a chance for us to reinvent ourselves. In Google's history, like in the past decade, they've been just trying to find a business that's not reliant on ads. Cloud computing is the main one. YouTube has subscriptions. There's YouTube TV. There's comment. Like they've been always searching for ways to move past this. In part for all the reasons we talked about, and in part because they don't love it.
Right.
But at the same time, like, YouTube was once competing with Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney on original programming and subscriptions. They mostly dropped out. They're like, let these companies like bury themselves competing for subscribers. And we're just going to continue to dominate a pretty good margin heavy business. Even after Apple changes, like online ads remains a pretty successful business, and Google's testament to that.
Mark Bergen, congrats on the book. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I thought that was really interesting, Joe. And the whole transparency push by Apple was not something that was really on my radar, other than I sort of like clocked it a little bit when I was using my phone, but I hadn't have thought of the impact on other businesses. But I thought it was interesting what Mark was saying about this idea that for a lot of these big tech companies, like they want to get away from the business of ad sales. And it feels like that almost from inception. Like there's almost an aversion to anything to do with media from the tech companies, even though ultimately they're in the business of selling media, right? Like no one actually wants to be a content producer.
Right.
At least YouTube does it. And when this idea of actually having to go out and sell ads, like it does seem kind of old fashioned.
It does. And I remember thinking about that too, because when like Google came on the scene, it was like this sort of wow factor. It's like this magical money machine because you tell the computer what you're looking for. And then that's the most amazing form of ads. But then a few years later, and they probably have like whole teams internally dedicated to like taking ad sales buyers from Procter & Gamble to the US Open, or like taking them out for wine and stuff. It's like, man, this is kind of like old school. This doesn't seem very techy to me.
Yeah. And I guess my other big takeaway from that conversation is we should be telling people to like, comment, and subscribe, right?
We should definitely be telling people to like, comment, and subscribe. So please do that. If you're listening, just one other thing, it always seems, and Mark was talking about like the incredible ecosystem of ad tech companies and how there's like 9 middlemen, right? And I've always thought there's an interesting, and I asked that question about speculators, like the interesting analogy between online ads and financial markets, whereas you might find an edge at some point, like, oh, this ad capacity space is really cheap here, or I found a really cheap way to get in front of these high dollar clients. and then everyone discovers it.
Right.
And
Someone
then the
comes
alpha
into
goes
like
away.
arbitrage that really quickly.
So it's like, and then the search for the new one. And so you think, why is there this like endless parade of ad tech companies? And it's like everyone like trying to find that arb. But look, if data is going to be harder to come by, people are going to have to really put into more work.
Yeah. And then the question is, what is the new edge? Because people got so into targeted advertising, like what comes next?
We don't talk about like tech business a lot. Maybe we should talk a little, because these companies are obviously so important in our entire lives.
For many, many years, we haven't really had to talk about tech business because the share prices just
went up. They just went up. But now I guess the question is the future is like to use the internet. We got to buy a coin from Andreessen Horowitz.
All right. On that happy note, shall we leave it there?
Let's leave it there.
Okay. This has been another episode of the Odd Lots podcast. I'm Tracy Alloway. You can follow me on Twitter at Tracy Alloway.
And I'm Joe Weisenthal. You can follow me on Twitter at The Stalwart. Follow our guest on Twitter, Mark Bergen. He's at MHBergen. And check out his new book. Like, comment, subscribe, Inside YouTube's Chaotic Rise to World Domination. Follow our producer, Carmen Rodriguez, at Carmen Armin, and check out all of our podcasts at Bloomberg under the handle @podcasts. Thanks for listening.